Hello everybody, welcome back to Planet X News. This is Scott from the Nibiru channel. It is April 6, 2017. And I wanted to introduce all of the viewers and subscribers to Major Ed Dames. Now Major Ed Dames worked and was enlisted in the U.S. military for 20 years, and he was in a secret program related to remote viewing. Now, since Ed has retired, he kind of went into a private practice with his remote viewing. And a few years ago, he released some information pertaining to Africa. And we all know over the course of the last week, Africa has sustained two sizable earthquakes. Africa is really not an earthquake zone. And Ed also goes into a lot of information pertaining to the sun and a kill shot. And I think all of the information pertaining to his last interview is something that all of you really need to listen to. So I'm going to bring you one of Ed's last interviews.
We don't know how much longer it will be until the kill shot, because mind is outside of time. The best that we could do is say this event is the last big one that you'll see as remote viewers before this kill shot sequence happens. Regardless of how long it is, that period between this shuttle event and the beginning of the kill shot sequence, we know as viewers, and I have personally viewed this particular event on a number of times because it's so powerful, that all of these warring parties that we see on the planet, all these many wars, that on the ground, all of these soldiers look up in the sky. They all look up. So something is happening in the sky. In fact, there's probably unprecedented atmospheric effects that in a recorded history, perhaps unrecorded history, there's been events like this, but nothing in recorded history. Something happens in the atmosphere that has not been seen before, because all these soldiers are looking up, and then they go home. Their priorities change. They go home. So that's when it starts. This kill shot sequence will cripple communications worldwide. It will take out satellite communications in a very short order. Power grids, we're all aware of what it will do to power grids and what it has done in the past, and in certain instances, go back and check it out. Power grids will go down. There's many people over many months of time, and throughout the world will have no power. There are cities without power and communication. You can figure out for yourself what that will mean too. Not only will you not be able to pump gas, not only will you not be able to pump water, not only will there not be food on the shelves because there'd be no gas in the trucks to take the food to the cities, but I could go on and on. You can figure the rest out for yourself. That's why this concept of sanctuary, knowing where to go with your last tank of gas, is so important. There are some tangential effects that we're picking up also as remote viewers, and have picked up over the years. Apparently, the center of the Earth, the core of the Earth, is changing rapidly as an effect of what is happening on the sun. And if that's the case, then we're probably looking at, as an adjunct to effect to the kill shot sequence, we're probably looking at massive volcanism and earthquakes as well. And I think it's very important to point out, and very important indeed, because of the adiabatic heating of the atmosphere, we're going to have very high winds in many parts of the Earth. The sky, the sun, the light will be obscured. It will be very difficult to grow crops on the surface because of both winds and lighting conditions. Solar physicists were chewing their nails because they were very concerned that the sun had been very quiet for so long, and this was not predictable. And so because it was not predicted, it did not follow the solar cycle, They were afraid that the sun might be doing something erratic. And that's when we began to see in the press and the news all these warnings about what major solar flares would do to the planet, to communications, to power grids, etc. And then in the last few months, we've seen that the sun's been relatively quiet. And now the scientists are saying, well, maybe the sun is going into a long period, years of quiescence. It's going to quiet down, and that's what we're seeing. And that might create global cooling. That may be why there's been the storms, snowstorms have been so severe, because the sun's quieter and not as active. Folks, it's the calm before the storm. It is the calm before the storm. The kill shot effects, and these will come and go, but the massive damage, first of all, will be to communications. Communications satellites, military satellites as well, will go down. We're not talking about single event latch-ups where you have a couple of semiconductors go bad. No, these things will be fried. Anybody in space, whether you're inside that little leaded shield on a space station or not, you're fried. You're in bad shape. You're going to die. Okay. So communication, power grids. Power grids, when they go down, folks, when the sun takes the power grids down, it's done it before. This time they won't go back up. It'll be months and months, if not years, to get power grids back up and running. There's going to be no power. Okay, so you'll need some. If you live in a place where it's going to be cold, you're going to need fuel to stay warm. So there's a lot of planning to do, folks. I would encourage you to start now, if not yesterday. I also want to point out that there's going to be most probably unprecedented geophysical events when this kill shot sequence starts. Earth can only take so much of protons hitting its magnetosphere, and on top of that, you're going to have X-rays that will be at Earth in 10 minutes, right? Now, we don't know how powerful those X-rays will be, but we do know that those protons will be extremely powerful, that mass from the sun. So we're looking at anywhere from 24 to 48 hours, perhaps sometimes longer, depending on the velocity of the flare itself, before that actually impinges upon Earth's atmosphere and begins to heat it up. When the heating occurs, after that's done, that's when the power grids begin to go down. That's the X-rays themselves will take out satellites if they're powerful X-ray flares.
The kill shot, a series of devastating solar flares that will strike Earth, will cause the loss of all global GPS and communication systems. Power grids for entire regions and countries will fail. There will be unprecedented regional heating and atmospheric effects. But what parts of the world will be affected the most? And what areas do remote viewers see as survivable?
This is not to say, I want to presage, I want to caveat what I'm about to say and qualify it with this. Just because we have not seen sanctuaries out of the thousands of individual sanctuary remote viewing sessions and projects that work, just because we've not seen sanctuaries in some of the places I will outline, does not mean there are none there. I'm just saying a pattern has emerged that says the following. South America, we found no sanctuaries in South America or Latin America. We have found, additionally, very few sanctuaries in the entire southern hemisphere, including Australia and New Zealand, with some exceptions in Australia and 1 or 2 exceptions in New Zealand. Almost all of the sanctuary locations are in the northern hemisphere. For Europe, a number of sanctuaries for Europe, but almost without exception, they are all in generally northern Europe, but not too far north. So we're looking at certain places in Austria, Poland, all the way through Russia. But it's important to know that all of these sanctuary locations, almost without exceptions, are small locales that are distant, fairly distant from population centers or separated geographically by mountain ranges or bodies of water from large population density centers. And you know as well as I do that how many people do not have the option to move. Even if they knew where a sanctuary was, even if they knew where their own personal survival zone was, they don't have the option to move. For those people, here are the very, very essential things that you're going to need to try to sit this out. Fresh water is critical. You must have fresh water because it will be in short supply almost worldwide, not all over the world, but in many places, very short supply. Critical. As much access to fresh water as possible. If you happen to live next to fresh water, clean fresh water, you're lucky. That's the best condition to live in. Obviously, food. You're going to have food. Everybody now feels that something's coming down. Economically and globally, it has nothing to do with the kill shot. That's just economics alone. Food supply is already short, and food is expensive and going to be more expensive. But it will be absent. There will be no access to food once the kill shot sequence starts. You'll have to have stored food. Shelter. You need to have shelter, as you know, and you're going to need to protect yourself. You can't do this alone. People need people. You'll have to band together as communities, hopefully, and for self-protection and to help each other through this. Remote viewing in terms of forecasting and predicting remember, it's different. Remote viewing is direct knowledge. In this case, kill shot case, we're perceiving an event, and we're downloading data, period. You can take that or leave it. Do whatever you want with the information. I feel that it's important in terms of a public service to put that info out, like we did in the case of a global economic collapse. When gold was $230, I told the public on national radio, it's going to $2,000. Everybody laughed at that. They laughed at the Japanese quake. In fact, the Japanese public were so scared they didn't want to believe that something like that would ever happen. A nuclear reactor breaking. Those kinds of things. We've got a track record here. It's scary. It scares me. I want to be in denial sometimes about the very information I download. I don't want to believe it, and yet I have to. I have no choice. But I sure don't want to think about it. But I'm going to have to. It's going to be forced down my throat sooner than not. An important consideration, and let's not kid ourselves, you can imagine how many emails I receive and how many people walk up to me and say, Ed, I believe that this is going to happen based upon your past predictions and based upon my own remote viewing. But my family and friends think I'm bonkers, or they're not going to accept this, or they're angry at me for talking about it. What should I do? I always have the same answer. It's just what I would do the same thing too, and do the same thing. Identify your own sanctuary location. Identify it. Recon it and become familiar with the area. Take some time off from work. If you're lucky enough to have a job under this administration, take some time off from work. Go and familiarize yourself with this place, this small town or village or wherever it is. And know how far it is to drive, or if you have to get on a plane, how long it will take to get there, etc. I said, because when the sequence starts and there's no commo, and there's no electricity, no power, and there's no water, etc., then your friends and your family will believe you. But if you do not have your affairs in order and have not identified this safe zone by then, you're still screwed. So do it quietly, do it alone, let them continue. There's no need to continue the discussion. Just tell them it's a hobby. Identify this place to go to. That way when they're scared to death, you can say, honey, let's go. Take the kids and let's go. Call your brother and sister later, when we get there, and if you can call at all, or tell them where we are going so they can come too. Do that. In my career, I was a science and technology intelligence officer, so I've had a career briefing and working with some of the best scientists and engineers in the world, especially in my own country, too. And I've seen skepticism in all fields, so I'm perfect. It's easy to understand skeptics, and frankly, if I were not a remote viewer, and Ed Dames or somebody like me came up to me and told me about this, I wouldn't believe him. How could you? This thing is so disastrous to even think about. Why even think about it? You know, you don't want to hear stuff like this. The world's a difficult, some places, many places, grim enough place to live now. Who wants to hear about the end of days and being fried by El Sol? So I'm perfectly sympathetic with the skeptics. There's an additional point that I really need to make. I really need to make this because there's so much confusion in the public eye about remote viewing and remote viewing predictions compared with the end of the world type of prognostications that we see all over the place too. We're not saying, as professional remote viewers, that the kill shot sequence is the end of the world. We're saying it's the end of life on Earth as we know it, probably, but it's not the end of the world. There are still going to be humans alive on this planet that are going to have to rebuild after the sun goes back to normal, which it will. We don't know how long that will be.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, you have just been listening to Major Ed Dames. He worked for the United States military and federal government for 20 years. As a remote viewer, and believe in every word that he says. His last seminar before he disappeared was August of 2016. And ladies and gentlemen, we ask that you please stay updated, stay informed, and stay tuned. It's also a very good idea to share our video information on Facebook and Twitter. This awakening must come now. If you are interested in food and water prepping supplies for any emergency, you can visit my affiliate, foodforliberty.com, and their link will be in the description box under the video. We also ask that you make sure that you are subscribed to Planet X News and the Nibiru channel for all of our current updates. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. Hello everybody, welcome back to Planet X News. This is Scott from the Nibiru channel. It is April 6, 2017. And I wanted to introduce all of the viewers and subscribers to Major Ed Dames. Now Major Ed Dames worked and was enlisted in all of the information pertaining to his last interview is something that all of you really need to listen to. So, I'm going to bring you one of Ed's last interviews.
We don't know how much longer it will be until the kill shot, because mind is outside of time. The best that we could do is say this event is the last big one that you'll see as remote viewers before this kill shot sequence happens. Regardless of how long it is, that period between this shuttle event and the beginning of the kill shot sequence, we know as viewers, and I have personally viewed this particular event a number of times because it's so powerful, that all of these warring parties that we see on the planet, all these many wars, that on the ground, all of these soldiers look up in the sky. They all look up. So something is happening in the sky. In fact, there's probably unprecedented atmospheric effects that in recorded history, perhaps unrecorded recorded history. There's been events like this, but nothing in recorded history. Something happens in the atmosphere that has not been seen before, because all these soldiers are looking up, and then they go home. Their priorities change. They go home. So that's when it starts. This kill shot sequence will cripple communications worldwide. It will take out satellite communications in a very short order. Power grids, we're all aware of what it will do with the power grids and what it has done in the past, and in certain instances. Go back and check it out. Power grids will go down. There's many people over many months of time, and throughout the world will have no power. There are cities without power and communication.
U.S. military for 20 years, and he was in a secret program related to remote viewing. Now, since Ed has retired, he kind of went into a private practice with his remote viewing, and a few years ago, he released some information pertaining to Africa. And we all know over the course of the last week, Africa has sustained two sizable earthquakes. Africa is really not an earthquake zone. And Ed also goes into a lot of information pertaining to the sun and a kill shot. And I think